Did you know that some mountain villages never finish a night? Snow keeps the hours, lamps keep their small suns, and the river repeats one quiet sentence until it sounds like yours. They aren't on maps. They appear when you're tired enough to accept a door that shouldn't exist. He had walked through white so long that white was the only color left. Boots full of ice, breath like torn cloth. Thoughts counted just to keep moving. Then the storm folded and a seam of amber stitched the dark. He didn't choose the glow. His bones did. The village gathered beside a slow black river that seemed to think before it moved. Cabins hunched on rock and snow, windows breathing dull warmth. In the square, a single fire burned, steady like an eye that refuses to blink. "Hello?" he called. His voice returned softer, as if the place had sanded the edges. No answer. A door yielded. Inside, a table set, bowls steaming, bread, a chair pushed back the way a body leaves it. Heat limped from the hearth. On a peg hung a coat that would have fit him. He touched the sleeve. Warm. He tried a second house, a third. Everywhere the same careful absence. Beds made, boots drying, a kettle singing with no hand to lift it. Not abandoned, paused. Silence like someone holding a breath to listen. He ate because hunger thinks faster than caution. He slept because the bed forgave his weight. When he woke, the bowl he had emptied was full again. The bitten bread had rounded itself. Through the window, dawn looked like dusk in a paler coat. Only the river moved. He stepped outside. Fresh snow had erased his tracks. Somewhere behind the cabins, a latch clicked softly. He turned. Nothing. Only air recently disturbed. He said thank you to no one. The thank you came back neat and well behaved, as if the village preferred certain words. The path that seemed to leave walked him past 10 doors, over a narrow bridge, up a drift, and into pines so close they braided the wind. 10 strides later he emerged, into the square again, returned gently, as if the forest had corrected a small mistake. By the river stood a notice board of oiled wood, letters burned with a patient nail. We wait, we watch, we warm. Do not look for us, do not look away. Underneath, smaller. The mountain keeps what the world forgets. He touched the words. The board was warm. Up the slope, a bell answered with a careful note. He turned, and at the end of the square, something person-shaped leaned out of the weather to watch him. He raised his hand. The shape thinned and became smoke again. His hands were shaking. The spoons in his pocket chimed. He laughed, and the laugh came back smaller. A log slid by itself to the lip of the sled, as if an unseen knee had nudged it. He set it on the fire. Flames lifted and settled like a sleeping chest. "I don't want trouble," he said. "Only one safe night." From a porch, a shutter tapped twice, once for hearing, once for understanding. Only then did the village finish the sentence it had been building since he crossed the bridge. "You are being watched." He tested the edge of the place. The road out was polite and circular. It returned him to the fire as if escorting a guest who had stood up too early from dinner. He tried to be angry. Anger slipped on the ice and sat down to cool. On a lintel he found a carved mark, a circle with a vertical line. On the next house, 2 circles, then none. Patterns here behaved like fish. You could see their flash, but never hold them. He said the marks aloud and forgot them mid-sentence. A bell tolled once. He followed the sound up a lane where cabins leaned shoulder to shoulder. Another bell answered across the river, and a third far above, like an echo that had decided to be itself. The tones were not time, but intention. The village rang itself into order the way a body clears its throat. Inside a house with a curved stair, a leather book lay on a table. First page, for those who come hungry. Then names and places: Odessa, Saint Etienne, Pune, Kansas City, and notes. "Thank you for the night. I won't tell. I will. Farther in, a different ink. If you see us, don't stop seeing us. If you don't see us, don't look in corners. Corners hold. Keep to the middle of rooms. Keep to the sound of water. The mountain forgives many stupidities, but not curiosity sharpened into a knife. He closed the book with both hands, like pressing a patient back to sleep. He ate, he slept, he woke to the same food refilled, the same fire unchanged, the same sky with its bruised blue patience. Only the river moved with memory, the rest felt memorized. Footprints crossed a bridge, his tread but longer, lighter. They led to a door he had not opened. The iron ring was cold when he lifted it, warm when he let go. He pulled. The house held a wide window like glacier glass. Beneath it, offerings or trophies or salvaged mercies, a pressed blue flower, a copper coin rubbed to whisper, a comb with broken teeth, a torn map corner, a single earring. The painting on the wall showed the village under a sky that was neither day nor night. Brushstrokes within the snow hinted at movement from below, as if things turned over to face the cold. He leaned to the window. His breath fogged and cleared. His reflection did the same, but half a heartbeat late. In the river below, thin lights slid under the surface. Words set afloat to be carried without reply. The chair tucked beneath the table was now angled toward him. He sat because refusing would have felt rude. Water spoke from under the floor, not language, but pressure that answered without telling him why. He stood too quickly and bumped the table. The map scrap fluttered. He read the tiny print. Abandoned settlement. Last winter counted here. No date, no coordinates, just a sentence like a candle pinched out. He returned the scrap and left. At the threshold, his prints pointed both ways. Across the bridge, stones made two crescents facing each other, a mouth mid-word beside a shallow pool. He stepped between them. Sound lost its top notes. The village became a low instrument. He touched the water and learned three quick truths. Alive, listening, deep. Ripples thickened in place, began to glow. A child's voice arrived from the pool, tidy as a ledger. One to watch the fire. One to watch the door. One to watch the bridges so no one leaves wrong. Who keeps the names? He asked. Whichever of us is forgetting the fastest, the water said, pleased with the rule. Where are you? He asked. Where we agreed to be, it answered, and the glow smoothed out like a hand over linen. He did not ask permission. He offered, I can watch the fire. The place tuned warmer by a small degree that felt like acceptance. At the square, he fed logs. Sometimes a fresh one slid to the sled's edge, as if nudged by a knee he could not see. He learned the fire's moods, how it liked a smaller log first, how it hushed when snow thickened, how it brightened when the river spoke. At midnight, the chair beside him curved under a weight. He did not look. Heat radiated, the specific warmth of someone who had worked and not yet slept. I'll keep the blaze steady, he said to the presence. The chair's knot approved. Steps withdrew without prints. By the third night, he knew the script. The lamps dimmed if stared at, the shutters tapped messages no alphabet could hold, and the bell on the high slope rang not in hours, but decisions. Belonging began at the rim of him, dangerous as thin ice that looks like glass. The bell bothered him. He took the path that pretended to be steeper than it was, cabins thin to sheds, sheds to dark pines shouldering snow. The bell hung from a timber frame beside a chapel, no larger than a shed. Not Christian, not pagan, only local. Inside, shallow carvings circled the walls, a bowl, a bridge, a door, a flame, a river. In the center, a round stone with a band of metal set through it like a horizon. He touched the bell's rope. The metal was cold, patient. He rang it once. The sound walked away uphill and returned with company. Not echoes, agreements. In the returning tone, he heard words he did not want translated. He was halfway back to the square when footprints appeared ahead of him. Not his stride, not anyone's he knew. They came down the path, pressed the last step in front of his toes, and stopped. Behind him, the snow exhaled. He didn't turn. The lamps along the lane brightened as if a theater cue had landed, and in that stage of amber, the figure at the far end of the square became clear enough to name. Not a person, not weather, a refusal to be either. He lifted a hand. The figure did not mirror him this time. It tilted its head, considering. Bells counted once, twice, again. The river thickened its voice. Somewhere a door unlatches itself whenever someone lies. He kept his hand up until his arm shook, and when he lowered it, the figure was gone, leaving only an emptier place in the air where a decision might sit. He lasted another day inside the grammar of the place. He learned the square's weather, where the wind made a scene, where the fire refused a wet log, where the lamps dimmed to avoid notice from the river. At dusk, the shutters pulsed, a private code. He answered with matches, striking once, twice, pausing. He did not know what he said, but the village seemed satisfied. He found a shed behind the porch house. Inside, a loom sat warped with thread the color of ash. The pattern on the loom wasn't cloth yet. It was a map woven as memory. River as black cord, cabins as knots, bridges as braids. In the upper corner, his footprint had been woven into the weft. Long, cautious, curious. He ran a thumb along it and felt the heat of his own error. Pinned beneath the loom's frame lay a scrap of paper with a longer hand than the guest books. We keep what time places here. If you do not wish to be kept, leave before the names begin to stitch. Leave how? He asked the loom. The weave took up a breath of dust and settled as if having said door without lips. He tried the door he had not tried, the one under the bell, the one that faced uphill, the one that never took snow in its threshold. It opened onto a hallway of scent and cold, pine gum, iron, the penny tang of a winter stream. The hall ended at a second door. It did not open. On its wood, small thumbprints had worn hollows, children's or very patient adults. Below, a band of metal cut the door at chest height, polished by many coats. He pressed his forehead to the metal. It was warm. He imagined 100 foreheads doing the same, giving heat to be remembered, receiving stored warmth when the mountain grew mean. He spoke to the door as if to a person who could not wake. I won't push. Back in the square, the river had gathered a shape like a mouth again. The names, it said, the child's voice softened by distance. What about them? They keep you if you write them where keeping happens. The guest book? Silence like a nod. He returned to the curved stair house. The book lay where he'd hidden it, as if the room humored his secrecy. He opened to the blank. The pen waited, heavy, almost grateful. He thought of the road that brought him here, the ones he had not taken before that road, the names that would ask about him if he were kind enough to answer. The pen made a dot. The dot looked like a vowel. He closed the book and put the pen away. That night, snow came straight down like clear thinking. He sat by the fire, listening to shutters talk and lamps breathe. He felt the village's attention slide off him the way rain slides off oiled wood. Relief came with a small grief, the way forgetting can feel like mercy and theft together. The chair beside him tipped again under a weight. He did not look. You're not ghosts, he said. The air warmed half a degree, the difference between a held hand and an empty glove. Are you alive differently? The bell answered once. Permission to call it that. A new log slid forward on the sled. He fed the fire and realized the pile did not shrink. Each time a log went in, the stack corrected itself by one, as if the village disliked subtraction. He turned his head and saw in the reflection of a window the person-shaped absence seated where the chair had been waiting. In reflection, the absence had almost a face, not features, just the idea of a listening expression. "I won't write my name," he said to the reflection. "Not yet." The reflection tilted its listening. Lamps dimmed and brightened like breathing. Far off, a fox barked exactly once, in a dialect that animals use when they refuse to be symbols. The night held. Morning carried a different grammar. Tasks he had not agreed to do, but was doing anyway. He swept the bridge with a broom that did not grow wet. He stacked wood that had already been stacked. He checked a dozen kettles to ensure water sang at a key the river preferred. The work arranged itself so politely he did not think to refuse. On the fourth circuit, he discovered the chapel door was now ajar. Inside, the round stone in the center wore a ring of frost. The carvings, bowl, bridge, door, flame, river, had gained a new shallow relief while he slept. A bell. The band of metal through the stone hummed under his palm. "Who carved that?" he asked. The chapel owned silence the way a lake owns its ice. He stood very still until the silence's surface formed a shape, like someone under the ice turning to face the light. When he stepped back, the floor did not creak where it should have. Space made room for him, then closed. Outside, the child's voice came from the river with the crisp tone of small authority. "One more night without names is still night. After that, the keeping begins." "Why the keeping?" "So that we can make mourning for someone else." He thought of the steaming bowls, the perfect beds, the gentle refilling. "You make mourning. We keep it where it's needed." "And if I leave?" he asked. "You carry us in your mouth like a warm stone. You will want to return to spit it out. That is how people break their teeth." He smiled despite the ice in his lungs. "You're very certain." "Yes," the water said, and swallowed its glow. He decided to defy certainty. He packed what little he had and walked the path over the bridge, past the 10 doors, into the pines. He did not stop at 10 strides. He made 20, 30, counting like a curse. At 40, the pines opened and gave him the square back with the courtesy of a maitre d'. The fire nodded. The sled exhaled a new log. He shouted then, full voice, throat raw. The sound leapt up the slope and came down as small snow. The lamps dimmed to protect themselves. A shutter answered with the patient insistence of a nurse's finger to the lips. He sat. Fury has a short coat in winter. Evening pressed its blue thumb on the village. On the third house downriver, a window that had been black for 2 nights glowed with the color of tea against porcelain. He went to it and paused before the door. He did not knock. The door did not open. The light inside pulsed in a rhythm he knew from childhood. The rhythm of a storyteller taking breath between parts. "I won't write my name," he said to the wood. From the river. "Then remember it." "I remember," he told the water. "Remember it until remembering changes you." He returned to the square, feeling like a book that had been marked but not opened. He took the stool by the fire and tried to choose a thought that did not feel chosen for him. In the corner of his eye, the person-shaped absence took the other stool, politely leaving space between their knees. "Tell me a rule," he said to it. The bells answered in a pattern he could almost catch. 1, pause, 2, pause. 1, 1, long rest. He repeated it, and the absence approved by warming the air around his wrists. "What happens to those who write?" the river answered. "We knit them into the night. They keep what needs keeping, and if they regret it," a slow splash like a shrug. "Regret is a coat. It warms or it weighs." He did not sleep much. When he did, he dreamed of his name walking away from him in the snow and turning back only long enough to say, "You don't wear me. I wear you." He woke with the taste of iron on his tongue, and his hands cupped around nothing as if protecting a spark that did not belong to him. On the next day, the village loosened a seam. Someone had drawn the curtains in 2 houses to reveal shelves of objects arranged by shape rather than use. Handles without cups, lids without pots, sleeves without coats. He understood the logic. Beginnings kept apart from endings, so neither would be tempted to declare itself complete. He found a tiny schoolroom with 3 desks and chalk that wrote in a hand not his own. On the slate, a sentence appeared while he watched. "Do not look for us. Do not look away." He drew a line beneath and answered, "How?" The chalk made 3 dots. "Wait." He waited until the chalk made no more weather. At the river bend, he saw the faintest figure standing on the water. Not weight, but decision, like a shadow that had chosen a surface. He walked toward it along the bank. The figure kept equal distance until the bridge obliged by being there at the right moment. On the planks, he paused. The figure paused. "What keeps you here?" he asked. The voice that came was not the child's now, but a woman's, low and practical, with the compassion of someone who knows what labor does to hands. "We were tired of ending. The mountain offered a night without the need to finish. We offered ourselves to the keeping. You died. We stopped doing that. Are you happy?" "Happiness is a summer word," she said. "We are precise. And precise means bowls fill, fires warm, doors listen, bridges remember feet. Names do what names were built to do." He thought of his own, heavy with family and cities and days he had failed to answer. "Mine breaks its teeth on me." "Then put it down before it eats you," she said gently. "Or carry it as a stone. Smooth it with your mouth until you know its shape from the inside. Will I see you if I write it? You will see what we see. And if I refuse, you will leave differently slow." He almost laughed. "Differently slow." She stepped back into river, or the river stepped forward into her. Only the lamp's halos proved anything had stood there. He walked until the world became only 3 colors: black water, white snow, amber light. At the edge of the village, the pines checked his pockets like bouncers for contraband hope. He had none left to declare. At dusk, he returned to the guest book and opened to the blank. He wrote 1 letter, only the first letter of his name, and stopped. The letter looked like a door halfway shut. He closed the book, placed his palm on it, and said the rest of his name inside his mouth, silent, tasting each syllable as if it were bread he was not yet allowed to swallow. A bell rang. Another answered. The high one counted 3. The river lifted its voice, and somewhere a shutter tapped 7 times. Too many for a yes, too few for a warning. The chair beside him turned itself inward. He sat and felt, for the first time, not watched, but accompanied. "Tell me the last rule," he whispered to the chair. The chair said nothing. The fire said, "Listen to the cold. It's the only honest thing." He put on the coat from the peg. It fit as if the arm had been made from his measure. He stood in the square looking at the chapel whose door had not opened, at the sled that did not empty, at the board whose warmth did not cool. He lifted his hands and for a moment caught snow in both, like 2 halves of a broken hour. He pressed them together. The hour stayed broken. The snow melted and made his gloves ring with tiny bells of wet. Night carried a patient cruelty. The lamps did not flicker. They watched. The roofs shed small avalanches when his thoughts grew too loud. He sat by the fire and forced his mind to count only the crackle of resin and the tiny collapses of coal. The counting worked until the river spoke in a third voice, older than the woman's, older than the child's, a voice that smoked and knew tools. "You keep the fire," it said. "Good. Fires are our mistakes done kindly." "Why mistakes?" "Because they undo wood. But wood undid us first." He understood nothing and felt honored anyway. "Will you keep me?" "If you finish naming yourself," the river said. "If you put your letters where they can be warmed." I don't know if I am mine. No one knows that, the river replied, amused. We keep you while you learn. Snow remade the square to first draft again. The houses softened their angles, as if they were made of breath. From the porch house, the shutter tapped a long phrase he could not translate. He answered by laying another log. The lamp over the map window house narrowed its circle until it lit only the sill with the offerings, as if to show him which memories the village preferred: small, held, burnished, smooth. He slept on the chair, the coat over him like a sentence set to low flame. He woke to quiet so exact he wondered if he had gone deaf. Then, exactly at the edge of his hearing, came a new sound, a pencil moving on paper, slow and deliberate. He followed it to the schoolroom. On the slate, his name had written itself in a hand he did not own. Not the whole, only the letters he had said in his mouth. Beneath, a line waited, asking politely to be finished. He backed away, palms up. Not yet, he told the room. I have to know whether leaving is crueler than staying. The chalk rolled, stopped at the board's lip, and hung there just long enough to be undecided. He fled to the chapel. The door that had been stuck now yielded. Inside, the round stone no longer carried frost. It carried a shallow basin of water. In the water, thin lights moved as if remembering whatever they had been before water learned them. He bent over the basin, and the face that bent back was his, and not his. A version smoothed by uses he hadn't yet earned. It looked relieved. The relief angered him. Stop deciding for me, he told the room. The basin darkened obediently until he saw only sky, bruised blue, generous with stars that did not bother to blink. He felt very small and very seen. The feeling was unbearable and generous in equal parts. He left the chapel and walked to the river mouth where the crescents waited. He stood between them and tasted his name again, like a fruit with a bitter skin. He peeled what he could. He spit what he couldn't. Tomorrow, he told the water. If I stay, I write. Then sleep, said the child's voice, suddenly tender as wool. We will keep the dark for you. He dreamed of a bus stop that never received a bus, only passengers who arrived already seated and left standing. He dreamed of his mother holding a tin of cookies without opening it, smiling like someone who had been taught how to smile from a book. He dreamed of the coat on the peg raising its arm for him the way a parent raises an umbrella over a child. He woke to a morning that had been ironed flat. Even the river sounded pressed. He went to the guest book without letting himself hesitate, because hesitation breeds corners, and corners hold. The book opened to the blank without crackle, as if it had been waiting in warm hands. He wrote his name, all of it. The pen felt simultaneously heavier and lighter, like a tool that remembered every hand that had used it and still wanted his. When he lifted the pen, the ink did not wet the page. The page drank it like thirst. The letters shone and then settled. Nothing dramatic happened, no bells, no oaths. The quiet deepened by one shade, as if someone had added a floor to the building he lived inside. He closed the book and found his shoulders had lowered in a way he had not noticed they were raised. At the square, the person-shaped absence stood not at the far end, but arm's length away. He did not step back. It was not cold, not warm. It was the temperature of decision. Will I become you? He asked. You will become what you already are, but kept, the river answered for the figure, or the figure answered through the river. We are not a different species. We are the same sentence with a different punctuation. What punctuation? A night that does not finish. He laughed once, softly, because humor survives in any climate. And work? More careful now, said the woman's voice. Work that does not erase itself. He learned the careful work. He oiled the notice board so letters stayed warm. He stacked wood so subtraction did not offend. He listened for the bell and heard in its patterns the small negotiations a village makes with itself. Who watches, who warms, who waits, who is allowed to forget what for a while. He sat at the river crescents when the child counted tasks and added almost shyly, "One to listen when someone cries without sound." "That is a task?" he asked. "It keeps bowls full," the child said, and he did not doubt it. That evening he walked to the edge again, not to escape, but to measure. The pines opened the same polite way and closed with the same care, and he realized the forest had never been a wall. It had been a hand on his shoulder, steering him to a seat that had always belonged to him, if he wanted it. He slept with the coat over him and felt, once, a second weight tuck the hem. He said, "Thank you," without opening his eyes. The thank you came back the way love does when it remembers to be quiet. There is a difference between being kept and being trapped. He learned to name it. Kept meant the village asked, and he answered. Trapped meant the village would answer for him. The line between was the thickness of breath on cold glass. He practiced keeping the glass clear. Visitors came. Not many. A woman in a green hat arrived at dusk and left by dawn, a warm bowl between both hands, her eyes swimming with the grief that made no complaint. A boy whose jacket had lost its zipper slept at the chapel stone and woke laughing without knowing why. An old man sat at the river crescents and did not speak at all, but when he left, the lamps brightened in a way that made him look taller. He did not show himself to them. He understood the village's custom. Those who keep are seen only by those who look the right way. He hid in reflections and gentle drafts, in the warmth that slides into gloves before hands do. Each time a visitor thanked the room, he felt the thank you enter him like food. He wrote in the guest book, small notes at the edges of pages, instructions that were not orders. Sleep before you decide. Eat before you remember. If the river speaks, answer out loud. The cold is honest. Believe it first, then believe yourself. On the 5th night after his name, the bell called him uphill without ceremony. In the chapel, the basin held no water, only a clean stone. On the stone lay the torn map corner from the window house and the comb with missing teeth. He placed his palm beside them. The stone warmed. The voice older than the woman's said, "Keep the bridge tonight." He stood on the bridge through the hours that pretend to be 3 but are 1. The river moved like an oath. Snow came in paragraphs. In the middle of those paragraphs, a step sounded where steps should not. On the water, the person-shaped absence stood below him, watching up. The watching felt kind, nearly unbearable. "I'm afraid," he admitted. "We are too," said the child's voice, no bravado at all. "For what?" "To be forgotten kindly," said the woman's voice. "To be remembered wrong," said the older voice. He understood then that keeping had its own horror, the fear of easing so gently that the world would not know you had done it. He answered with the only thing he had, a human promise. "I'll remember precisely." The absence on the water inclined as if a head had bowed. The bell on the slope rang a single delighted note. The lamps let themselves be proud for one long blink. Near dawn, the snow paused to listen. He heard boots he did not know approach. A figure in a red scarf stumbled onto the bridge, skin too thin for the cold, mind too full for silence. He did what the keepers had done for him, fed the fire, warmed the bowl, turned the bed back, wordlessly. When she slept, he set the pen near the guest book, but not upon it. Choice is a fragile animal. You do not clap near its ear. Time in the village does not stack. It tessellates. He learned where his piece fit. A keeper of bridges and bowls. A listener who answered the river aloud so other mouths could rest. He kept his name the way a lantern keeps its flame. Sheltered, not smothered. Sometimes he wrote it on the slate to be sure it still spelled him. Sometimes he did not. When the weather softened enough to call itself a different word, he walked to the edge and did not test it. He simply stood with the pines and let them inventory him. Coat, breath, purpose, name. The pines approved by shaking snow from their sleeves. Visitors continued to arrive. Some saw nothing but warmth and left lighter. Some saw too much and chose to stay a night longer than planned. A few wrote their names. One or two asked to forget. The village obliged in the way it knows, by teaching the forgetting to be gentle rather than absolute. He dreamed less of buses and more of doors that did not lock. He learned the bell's syntax well enough to smile at its jokes. He could tell which shutter belonged to which kindness without seeing it move. His fear did not end. It learned a better job, warning without ruling. Once at the river crescents, the child counted the tasks and added quietly, "One to keep the one who keeps." He looked around for the keeper's keeper and found only the village itself. Lamps breathing, fire thinking, doors listening. The notice board warm with fresh oil, the board's letters soft as skin. In the window house, the painting gained a new stroke. A tiny figure on the bridge, not detailed, only implied, head tilted the way people tilt it when they are learning to hear under the obvious sounds. He pretended it wasn't him and failed at pretending. On a night when the sky wore its bruise blue generously, he walked to the chapel. The basin held water again. In the water, thin lights moved with purpose. He bent until the face looking back was both his and the village's, a composite made of patience. He whispered, "Did you know that sometimes the most peaceful places are the ones that carry the greatest secrets?" The water approved by refusing to ripple. He stepped outside and found the person-shaped absence waiting by the fire. It did not block heat. It made heat matter. He sat, and for a long while they watched the wood learn to be light. "Will this night ever finish?" he asked, not complaining. "It finishes each time someone is brave enough to leave," said the woman's voice. "And it begins each time someone arrives needing a beginning. And me? You are the sentence between," said the older voice, pleased. The child hummed a small agreement and counted once, twice, stopping at one as usual. He thought of buses and kitchens and names written on envelopes. He held his name like a warm stone, feeling each syllable until it was smooth enough to pass to another palm without cutting. He did not know whether he would stay another hour or another year. The village did not care as long as he kept precisely. Snow began again, fat, thin, hesitant, sure. The lamps lifted their halos. The river repeated the quiet sentence until he heard it as his own, and did not mind. Somewhere upslope the bell rang once, delighted to have said exactly what it meant. He stood, added a log, and looked toward the bridge where footsteps would someday sound that he did not expect. When they did, he would be ready with a bowl and a bed and a pen placed near, but not upon, the book. And if you ever find yourself wandering alone in the snow, if you see smoke against a dark sky and hear water moving beneath a frozen bridge, you will face the same decision he faced. To keep or be kept, to write or to remember, to leave kindly or to stay precise. Either way, the mountain will not argue. It keeps what the world forgets. It watches without blinking. It warms without asking why. Did you know that some nights are not meant to end, only to be kept for those who need them most?